to our regular
Yes, it
meeting.
is. No. Okay. I'll swing by.
All right, very good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 public hearing on the budget statement for the Railroad Transportation Safety District. I have a really well-written statement here that I should read. This public hearing involving the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. In accordance with Nebraska law, notice of the location and time of this public hearing, together with a summary of the proposed budget statement, was published in the Lincoln Journal-Star newspaper on August 31st, 2023. The RTSD agenda for today's meeting was posted on the RTSD website on August 30th, 2023. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County official government sites. In addition, on August 30th, 2023, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board located in the City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. With that, we will ask Roger to come forward and present us with a review of the fiscal year.
Okay, Tony will come up as well. Good morning. So just as getting started, a reminder that there is a state-required statute for the budget to go to the state auditor's office. Those are separate and different forms than what we routinely use. What you have on the screen before you is the budget that the RTSD board approved at the June 12th meeting. Nothing has been changed on that since that time. So the numbers stay the same, and the whole goal today is to have Tony come up and go over the general budget form that goes to the state office auditor, and then to allow public input or any questions about the budget as well. But the main thing is want to make sure that everyone understands this replicates the budget approved by the board in June. Since the June meeting, the evaluation for the county has been set, and that information was given to our auditor to use for computing the revenue. In the June meeting, the RTSD board authorized us to request a levy of $0.024 per $100. We have received back the resolution from the county board, and they chose to keep the levy exactly where it was as last year, so they did not approve the 2.4. So the budget was prepared using a levy of $0.022217 per $100, the same as last year. So with that, I would ask Tony to come up and kind of go through that budget form for you.
Good morning. I'm Tony Jarina with HBE LLP in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm just do a quick review of the budget that is in front of you. We can go page by page, but if you have any questions, please speak up right away if you want. Front page, page one. Most notable item is on the upper left-hand side of the budget form. It reflects your levy of $9,175,826. This is the most that the RTSD can ask for based on their assessed valuation and the rate that was approved by the county, 0.22217. On the next page, page two, we have a comparison of the budget years, 2021-22. We have a 2022-23, the year that just finished. And then we have our adopted budget on the right-hand side. The two prior years are actual numbers on a cash basis, not an accrual basis of which your audit report is presented on. It begins with your beginning cash. It shows your total real estate taxes brought in during the year, other types of revenues such as homestead exemption, property tax credits, and other minor local receipts such as interest and any reimbursements from the city of Lincoln, things like that. On the top right-hand side, we have money beginning for 23-24. We have beginning cash balances of $8,171,000. We have investments of $18,750,000, and then we have the county treasurer's balance of $144,404. That total of your resources at the beginning of this budget year is $27,065,000 approximately. Going down on that right side, we will show our property taxes being levied. Now you'll notice the amount there on the right-hand side is $8,995,000. You may ask, why is that different than the amount that's being levied? That's because that is less the county's commission for this form. Going down, we also have other state receipts, 18 million. That one? There, oh, sorry. $18,000 of motor vehicle pro rata taxes, other state aid, and then we have local receipts budgeted at $600,000. That is a lot higher than the prior year that was budgeted because mostly it's an increase in the budgeted revenue of investment interest income during the year. Much better this year than in prior years due to the increase in the better increase in the rates that are out there now. And Kevin Nelson will probably discuss that later on for you. Total a little bit lower on the right-hand side. We have operating expenses of $112,000. And then capital improvements of $36,514,000. We have that all budgeted in this year. That'll probably going to be reserved for this year coming up, and then in the future years, of which is probably going to be spent pretty quickly because of the 33rd and Cornhusker project. Down at the bottom, we are projecting we'll have a balanced cash forward amount of $56,000 if things like this did happen exactly as it did, but it'll probably be a little bit higher since I don't expect you to spend all those capital improvements next year. And then on page 2A, just a little more information. It shows our real estate levy again. And on page 3, correspondence. And this page here, which is our page 4 and 5, it is the calculation of your this is your lid supporting schedule. It shows your real estate taxes that you're levying, other state income coming in, and then it shows some data on your capital improvements, how they're being budgeted, and how much is being was spent during the prior year. Then on the bottom half of that page, with your lid exceptions, we are showing the capital improvements that are being budgeted. And then on the next page, we have some more restrictions. You get the 2.5 down at the bottom half of that page. You get the 2.5% automatically. You do have some growth in there of 0.31%, and then you have the additional 1% increase in your budget authority. Again, this is not an actual increase in your levy. This is the increase in your budget authority for future budgeting purposes. I don't know if I got a number that I can show there. Roger, I don't know how to bring this down if you can to see that bottom number. Well, I can explain that to you or tell you verbally. It is $2,003,000 approximately. So that is for future years. If you didn't have that additional 1%, it may be something like $1,930,000. So that's why we always encourage the board to vote for the additional 1% in their budget authority. And then after that is the page of your showing your capital improvements that the state wants to see, and the page after that should be it for the budget that has to be filed with the state auditor's office. And that is it.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Any questions? A lot of information there.
The main thing to think about with this budget is that you're getting the maximum that you can based on your assessed valuation and your levy rate.
Yeah. And, I mean, this budget is unusual, and we'll get more into this during our regular meeting, but we have a lot of cash on hand for an entity like this. But it's because, and it'll be discussed in the next meeting, it's because of the project at 33rd and Cornhusker that is a massive $100 million.
It will, yes, it will change in a few years.
Yeah, and so as we prepare for that, Roger's done a good job of getting us ready to go on that. And we will continue to acquire funds in preparation for that. If something changes and we don't need them, then we will certainly have a different discussion, but at this point, there's no guarantees. We won't use all of that. So that's the budget, the proposed budget that was voted on, and we need to have a hearing on today. We've already approved it. Roger, we won't be voting. So any questions for Tony or Roger? Thank you, Tony. Appreciate your time. At this time, then we would open it for public comment. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to comment on the approved 23-24 budget? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Edmondson, second by Schulte. Please call the roll.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Absent.
okay, Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Vest.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. We will move on. We'll move on then to the quarterly meeting of the Railroad Transportation Safety District for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. This meeting of the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. The RTSD agenda for today's meeting was posted on the RTSD website on August 30th, 2023. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County's official government sites. In addition, on August 30th, 2023, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board located in the City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all the materials being considered today are located at the dais, and complete copies of these materials are on file at the RTSD office at 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. All right, with that, we would move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes for the June 12th, 2023 minutes.
Would move approval.
Second.
I think you're left, James. So motion by Edmondson, second by Bowers. Please call the roll.
Bowers,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Abstain.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Item number 4, report of statement of financial activity. That would be Mr. Nelson.
Good morning, Kevin Nelson. I'm here to present the statement of financial activity. This report was generated as of end of business on Friday, August 18th. At that point in time, we had, for the fiscal year that was about a month and a half old, we had $2.5 million of total receipts and $70,000 of disbursements. As far as our cash balance, at that point in time, we had just under $3 million of cash and about $26.6 million of investments. Amy Wilson from the County Treasurer's Office and Roger and myself did meet the day before this report was generated and kind of went over where we're at with our CDs, with our investments, where the market is with interest rates. Obviously, right now, interest rates are very favorable to us. And so at that point, we decided to move $2.5 million from cash into CDs that we can invest and get larger interest rates out of that. And so we have done that. Amy, Roger, and I will continue to meet periodically throughout the year to kind of assess the cash situation and that kind of thing and get those funds invested as timely as we can to get the highest interest rate we possibly can. As been alluded to already in the budget meeting previous to this meeting, we are sitting on about $26.6 million of investments. Obviously, those funds are being set away for a rather significant project at 33rd and Cornhusker. Anybody have any questions on the report?
Right.
Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. Appreciate you being here. We do need to approve this report of financial activity.
Move approval the report of financial activity.
Second.
Motion by Schulte and second by Amundson. And please call the roll.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Item number 5, consideration of the fiscal year 22-23 audit.
Good morning again. I am Tony Jarina with HBE, and here to discuss go over the presentation of the independent auditors' financial statements, and mostly more known as the auditor's report. I'll give a brief summary of what this report has in it. In the front is our report on these financial statements, and in back of the first few pages of our audit report, we have the numbers part of the audit, which shows the statement of net position and the statement of changes or statement of activities and the changes in the net position. In the middle of the report, we have the significant accounting policies, and also the notes to the financial statements. That brings a little bit more depth to the numbers that are in front of it. And in back of the notes to the financial statements, we have some supplementary information and also the comparison of budget to actual numbers. Going to our auditor's report, it basically has 3 parts. It has our opinion on it, and then we have our basis for opinions, but then it also has the responsibility of management, and it also discusses the responsibility of the auditors in this engagement. In our opinion on these financial statements is a little bit wordy, but I'll need to discuss those or read them out. It is in the second paragraph on page 1. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities and the major fund of the district as of June 30, 2023 and 22, and the respective changes in financial position for the years then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. We are not modifying this opinion at all. It is a standard opinion on these financial statements. If we modified them, we may add a couple other paragraphs saying that we are giving a little bit of a different opinion or something such as that. But basically what you need to remember about this paragraph is, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. We say that because we are not guaranteeing any numbers or any small little numbers of this organization, because that is just almost impossible to audit. So, but in all material respects, these are the numbers in our opinion upon them. We can move over to page 5, which is the statement of net position. As of June 30th, 2023, and it also has comparative numbers for 2022. Total assets for 2022 was about $22,600,000. Now, as of 23, it is $30,300,000. The biggest changes in your assets were a decrease in your operating cash, but also a large increase in your certificates of deposit, which represent what we were talking about before, moving cash out of the operating accounts, the checking accounts and such, and moving them over to the CDs to take advantage of those higher interest rates. On the next page, we have our statement of activities, which is the changes in your assets and liabilities for the year. Last year, you had a change in net position of $6,800,000. This year, you have a change in net position of a positive $7,600,000. Total expenses.
Tony, excuse me 1 minute. What page are you on again now?
This is page 6.
6. You're still on page 6 then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I apologize.
We had a small decrease in total expenses. From last year was $765,000. Now we're down to $695,000. Total revenues, the biggest changes there would be your investment income. In the prior year, you only had about $54,000. This year, it amounted to $531,000. Big increase there. And that accounted for most of the increase in revenue compared to the prior year. On page 7, which is your balance sheet, using a little slightly different basis of accounting. Here we show deferred taxes. Basically, the only difference between the numbers I presented before on pages 4 and 5 are the deferred taxes. On this basis of accounting, we do not record taxes that are not available within 6 months following year end. So we kind of back those out for you. Other than that, not too much of a difference from the prior year. In back of those numbers there on starting on page 11 are your notes to the financial statements. And on page 13, we have a, let's see here. One thing I like to note, we had on note C on page 13, you had some committed and assigned fund balances. In prior years, you had $1.4 million committed for the 33rd and Cornhusker project. But on June 30th, 2023, you only had about $1 million that are committed. On the next page, one other note that I'd like to bring to your attention is the interlocal agreements. Also included in this, down at the third paragraph of note E, we discuss monies that go to and from the RTSD or the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County. Total payments to the City of Lincoln for the year ended June 2023 and 22 were $110,000 and $132,000 respectively. Those payments include amounts that are paid for Rogers fees and things such as that. You also had some payments to Lancaster County, about $11,000 in this year and about $40,000 in the year prior to that. Moving on down, pages on page 16 is your comparison of your budget that was passed, legally passed, and the actual amounts that were incurred for the year. These are on a cash basis. The biggest change, the difference is your investment income $349,000 compared to $60,000 that was budgeted. Now, I took a look at the amount that's being budgeted for next year's budget, and that's about $350,000. So we are changing that estimate now. In your expenditures, your operating expenses are just about the same. Same as the amount that you budgeted. Actual was $235,000. The amount that was budgeted was $255,000. Not much of a difference there. The large difference between the amount budgeted and the amount spent for capital improvements, big difference there because that's the way the budget is prepared, with this reserve being set up for the large expenditures in the future. Actual amounts for the year was like $467,000, but you budgeted $27,236. Other than that, after that, we have some supplementary information, such as your accounts, a description or detail of the accounts with the county treasurer. We have a list of the certificates of deposit on page 19, a list of your insurance coverage on page 20, and on page 21, we have a comparison of your rates and valuations for June 23 back to 2020. Quick review, obviously, but do you have any questions?
Well, first off, I want to apologize. We have a number of new members here, and Tony, they're probably not familiar with you. So if you don't mind, could you tell me, just give a brief, because I've been here 5 years, and you've been here longer, I believe.
Just a little bit longer.
Just a little bit longer. So why, I mean, just so the members, the new members, and remind the old members a little bit of who you are, who the firm you work with, and why we should be listening to what you have to tell us.
First of all, I moved out here in 1995, and I started to work with HBE, a local firm on the east side of Lincoln. They merged with HBE back in, probably about 8 years or so ago. Maybe even longer than that. I kind of lose track of time also. But Mesick and Crouch actually had this audit back then, way back then in 1995, when I started working on RTSD, and I've been working with RTSD's budget and audited financial statements since then. So I've been working on it. Now, Lucas Post here is the in charge on the audit, so he was actually doing the work for the audit. I was doing more of the review of the audit, but when it comes to the budget, I have always worked on the budget for you.
So you and your firm have been had long-term involvement with the RTSD.
Yeah.
And we've never had any bumps or any issues during that time.
No, and it's pretty easy because you normally go for the rate that's set by the county, and I don't remember a time when we haven't gone for the full amount, and there has been some times when you didn't have so much cash, and then sometimes when you have the excess cash, like now. But then obviously things are going to be going a little bit differently in the next few years. So I've seen the ups and downs of RTSD. Yeah.
We are looking forward to it going the other way soon. So I just wanted to let everyone know Tony has a long track record of credibility here, and so some folks might not have been aware of that. Anyway. Tony's just given us a presentation of the audit. Anything you need to add, Tony, or if not, we'll ask.
Not that much of a change. The big changes is thankfully the increase in the interest income for the year. Mm-hmm. The big changes in your cash is the movement of the operating cash down to the CDs to take some more bring in some more of that investment income.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
So is your audit just review the financials, or does it review process? Is it a process audit as well?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We start off looking at your at the internal controls for RTSD. We will come in before the audit. We will test the internal controls, although we don't give an opinion on those because that's a different type of audit. But we do look at the numbers and the internal controls, and we have different programs for cash, investments, revenue, expenses, and all down the line. And then that is just one part of the audit. Then we start with the inquiries of the people that are working on the audit and looking at the internal controls, because RTSD is related to the county, so we are using their internal controls, and they have an internal control document that we get updated every year, and we review those to make sure those are proper and in line with what we would expect.
Based on that, your time you spent looking at those processes, were there any recommendations that were made this year about changes that need to happen?
That, I do not believe we had a recommendation letter. No, we did not have any changes.
Okay, good.
Any other questions for Tony? All right. Now, Roger, do we approve the audit or receive the audit?
Oh, okay. What we are seeing here on the screen, it says preliminary draft. It will go final once you approve it.
Okay,
And then I will give you the representation letters to sign.
great.
All right.
All right. So
Thank
I
you.
would receive a motion to approve the audit.
So moved.
Move to approve the audit. Oh, excuse me.
Second.
Thank you both. Motion by Edmondson, second by Schulte. Please call the roll.
Schulte,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Beckes. Oh, wrong name, sorry.
Weber?
Yes.
Okay, we'll just say it passed 5-0, close enough. All right, moving on to item number 7. Roger.
And my apologies for maybe not making a few other comments about
Or 6. We're at 6.
HBE. Yes, I'll get to that real quick, but the RTSD has a common practice of using outside legal representation, outside financial and audit and budgeting support. Those individuals and firms have been with the RTSD a long time. They have performed very well, and we've continued to use them for consistency and security of the information. At another time, I'm more than willing again to continue to meet with the new board members and get them more up to speed with. I've met with Matt, but I have not yet met with Brody. I did meet with
I can't-
Justin. Justin.
Carlson.
There it
Justin
is.
Carlson. So,
Thank you.
okay. All right. With that said, report Kerr regarding the current budget status. Again, those we're just really kind of getting started into the year. Those are the expenses shown through August 18th. The majority of the operating is commissions. The county treasurer by statute serves as the treasurer for the RTSD and is responsible to collect and transfer those funds. They get that come in on property tax based on our levy, and they by statute get 1% of those collections that come in for themselves. So that 48,772 is that. Other than that, we have had very little activity in our actual capital improvements. We've spent a little under $5,000 miscellaneous engineering. That's the continuing work going on with the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone study that's currently going on, and we'll have a report on that later on. And the other is about $17,000 for 33rd and Cornhusker as we continue to do the engineering there. So I don't see any concerns or have any real issues budget-wise at this point, but would certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Roger. Now, we would move on to item 7, consideration of the 23-24 budget.
Yes, and I'll ask Tony to come back up again. This is the budget forms that he just went through with you during the public hearing, and I think we're at a point where, seeing no comments, I'll have Tony give you a brief overview again, and then consideration of approving that budget. So, Tony?
Good morning. Again, the budget that we are hopefully going to approve has a levy of $9,175,820. $175,826. It will be a net amount we are estimating of $8,995,000. And we are budgeting out all the expenses because we have to have a less than a 50% cash balance on hand according to the state. That's why that number is in there, so that's so large, but we have been doing that for as long as I have been doing the budget here. So other than that, we have the real estate taxes that are coming in. We also have some motor vehicle pro rata taxes coming in of about $18,000 we are estimating. We have some other state receipts of about $1,800. We have some in lieu of tax of about $1,500. And then we have some local other receipts. I think we have about $250,000 that's budgeted for reimbursements from the city, and maybe another $350,000 budgeted for interest income that we are expecting to come in during the year. Operating expenses are budgeted at $112,285, and total capital improvements $36,504,293. And that is your budgeted numbers for the year.
Now, Roger, correct me, did we approve this budget already, or do we approve it now after the public hearing?
You approved a budget in June. We just had the public hearing in the previous meeting on this budget.
Okay.
And now in this meeting, seeing unless board members have any questions or revisions that they want to propose, we didn't hear anything from the public.
Gotcha.
My recommendation is to approve this budget to be sent on to the state auditor.
Okay. So we had to approve a budget to set up the public hearing,
Yes.
give people time to look at it, and then give input if they wanted to. Okay. Folks, any comments here? Any points of discussion you'd like to bring up at this time?
I guess this looks to me like the budget doesn't specifically, I mean, I know we've got another project, Quiet Zone project we're going to talk about in a minute. This budget doesn't preclude us from doing additional work on that, right? This is mostly just collecting the money, and then we still get the chance to do some divvying out of that money, or
Yep.
discerning where that goes. Well, given that, I would move approval of the budget as attached.
Second that.
Okay, motion by Schulte and second by Admonson. Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Carlson,
Absent?
absent, sorry, Weber,
Yes.
Schulte.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Then we will move on to item 8, consideration of the Old Cheney interlocal agreement.
Okay, this is a project that's been around a while. Actually, the work is completed. The city, working with BNSF, did complete the sidewalk along the north side of Old Cheney Road from Hunts Drive west over into the trail in the park. And as such, again, the work is completed. This agreement has been renewed a couple of times where the RTSD has agreed to reimburse the city of Lincoln for the cost of the railroad putting in the panels for the sidewalk and any concrete sidewalk or driveways on the railroad right-of-way itself. The city is paying for the cost of any work outside of the right-of-way itself. And again, that work has been done. I don't believe that we have not yet been billed. Again, we needed to renew this. This terminated. We've been doing these on an annual basis. The city, I think, is still waiting for BNSF to final bill them for the work that they have done. And the city of Lincoln routinely asks that documents going to the city council and the mayor for execution be signed by the body initiating the agreement. So in this case, we're being asked to sign first, I guess, so that they know for sure we will pay them if they approve that. But this is pretty routine. In our next item, we will be discussing a master agreement that might allow us to not have to do annual interlocal agreements, project specific, but just have one agreement that we do annually. So answering questions, I've had a couple of comments from the neighborhood that they're tickled finally that there's a sidewalk over into the park and to the trail over there. So
I would just say that I'm going to resist saying that there are 3 commissioners here and 2 city council people here, but I won't bring that up. The point I really want to make is that one of the benefits of the RTSD, in addition to these big projects that we see, are these small projects that make crossings safe. And BNSF, when they have a good partner, will do a very good job of staying in front of those. And we have people like Roger out there looking at a crossing like this that is going to add value to a lot of folks to get to a park they want to use. Otherwise, it might be a much more difficult journey for those. This is one of those small things that really, I think, adds up in the community. So,
I didn't reiterate, but I suppose I should. Our budgeted estimation for that total work is $90,000. So, and the cities is more than that. So.
and we do these in the county and the city back and forth. So I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we renew the interlocal agreement with the city.
Here's your chance, Bruce.
Second.
All right, motion by Edmondson, second by Weber to renew the interlocal agreement. Please call the roll.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Best.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Number 9, consideration of the annual master agreement.
Okay, last year, we, trying to come up with ways to streamline paperwork and process a little bit, we actually initiated a master agreement between the RTSD and the City of Lincoln, whereby for crossing improvements, safety issues at crossings, with this agreement in place, the city would prepare plans. They would do the agreements and work with the railroad to improve crossings, to eliminate crossings. And then through this agreement, they would provide to the RTSD drawings, justification, and documentation of why this type of project meets the mission of the RTSD and request a reimbursement for a portion of that, just like the Old Cheney document that we just did. And then, provided there is budget remaining in those crossing improvement programs, we have $50,000 in the county and $250,000 in the city, and provided that I have reviewed and make recommendation, and then the RTSD president agrees, the president and the executive director can authorize reimbursement back to the city for individual projects through this master agreement rather than bringing them individually. It's got to be consistent with the budget, and there has to be money there, and it's got to meet the mission of the budget. And I do review that regularly, and I might take this moment for the new board members. William Bill Kudelek is the legal representation for the RTSD. He has drafted these documents. He does a good job of not letting me run amok. Don't put that in minutes.
Too late.
And go where I shouldn't go. But he has been outstanding in reviewing that information. I also, in disclosure of using a separate legal firm, actually, he works for Crosby Gunzel, and I believe it was representatives of Crosby Gunzel in the late 60s and the early 70s that actually drafted the initial legislation for the state to create the potential for an RTSD. So a long history. They've been very dedicated to us. They give us a more than fair rate for their work, and just easy to get along with, and have done a good job of representing the board and protecting the RTSD. So again, this agreement at this point in time, based on recommendation from our legal counsel, this would be an annual agreement. And next year, I will make sure that this agreement is back on the June agenda so that it can be approved ahead of, assuming the board wants to continue that kind of an arrangement. I think it is a good arrangement. It reduces some paperwork. I'm willing to do one with the county, but the county hasn't voiced an interest yet in doing that. So I would answer any questions. Currently, I would anticipate this agreement, if approved here, then goes on to City Council. We would use this agreement for the removal of the Union Pacific tracks on Northwest 12th out near the city's MSC and the airport entrance. So that would be our first opportunity to use this if approved, to answer any questions you might have.
So the expenditure from us, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. There's a cap on this of $250,000
For the city.
on the city side.
Yes.
Which this one's only for the city, right?
Yes.
So it's a cap of $250,000, and that's our $250,000 that they can spend $250 and we reimburse them $250.
They would, depending on the project, they would submit a request of how much money they're asking for reimbursement, and whatever we would approve, if this agreement is approved, would come out of that 250. If we get halfway through the year and there's only 150 in there and they ask for 200, we can give them 150. So it is limited by that 250, but it's not a guaranteed 250.
So it's an annual cap.
It's an annual cap.
And just give me some history, like how much have they historically done the last few years? Is 250 more or less than they've normally done?
Probably 250 is more than what we've done. It's been a little while. 27th and Highway 2, Nebraska Parkway, that new concrete pavement and crossing that BNSF did in there, we paid in there, and it was less than 100,000. Some years there might be more agreements or more crossing projects than others, Matt. So I don't know that there's an annual average, but I feel fairly comfortable that 250 is a reasonable number. And if we expend that and we believe that there's a project, we could always look at carrying over part of that expenditure into the next year.
Is it limited to certain type of crossing adjustments? Because you just mentioned removing some line.
It's anything from removal, abandonment, build a new crossing, repair the crossing, anything that we believe makes that crossing safer, smoother, and more appropriate for the traveling public to go over it.
Okay.
And I do, again, when we get those requests, I review that with Mr. Kudelik about whether or not that meets the mission for the RTSD, and he feels that it's appropriate expenditure for the board.
So, and this would be an annual thing, so in future years, if we looked at it and said, for whatever reason, we don't feel like this money is being used appropriately, we could rescind this, right? This is not a permanent thing.
Right. It's not permanent, every
Okay.
year.
I'm willing to give it a shot if it helps streamline things and give the city some of the flexibility that they need to move forward with the project. So I'd move approval of the master agreement.
I would second that.
Okay. Motion by Schulte, second by Amundson. Any further comments or discussion? Good questions. Please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Schulte?
Yes.
Vest?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Okay. Motion moves 5-0 to approve. Number 10, Roger, a number of reports here.
Yeah, and we have several people here to kind of give us an update. Chris Humphrey, who is the project manager for the RTSD 33rd and Cornhusker project, is here to give us an update on just the status of that project. So, Chris?
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris Humphrey, project manager for the RTSD for the North 33rd and Cornhusker project. I'm just going to give you a brief update on where we're at. So the RTSD has given comments back to our consultant, Olson Associates, on the environmental document. So they're busy incorporating those comments and responding to those. They are also working with the Nebraska Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration on one last section of the environmental document. And they're wrapping that up, and hopefully today they're going to be resubmitting that back to NDOT, the state. That will go under their review, forwarded to FHWA, and as long as everything is good, then they can put the entire document together and submit it as an entire package. So I'm hopeful, since all these little sections have been reviewed by the state and FHWA, that the review of the entire document will go fairly smooth in regards to that. So we have also been coordinating with the Corps of Engineers on the Dead Man Run project. They are about ready to submit their 95% plan submittals, which will include right-of-way, more specific final right-of-way for that. We have talked also with the state and FHWA about early advanced right-of-way acquisitions for the 33rd and Cornhusker project in coordination with the Dead Man's Run project. Basically, it would be two separate actions, but the RTSD would be able to acquire additional parcels or additional pieces of parcels outside of the Dead Man's Run project if we decide to move forward with that, so that we will be continuing discussions with that, just to kind of take advantage of negotiating appropriately with each of the property owners on those parcels that touch base on both of the projects. We also had our debriefing with the FRA on the railroad crossing elimination grant that was submitted. That was a good meeting. They told us kind of where we can focus on for this next round. That is an annual submittal for, I believe, 5 years. We have not seen the notice of funding opportunity come out yet. But we're imagining it'll probably come out within the next few months. I believe last year it came out in October. So we'll be submitting on that for that grant again as well.
And how first off, Kim, who was present at the debriefing with the FRA? Who all attended that?
We had the FRA, we had Roger and me, our consultants, Barb, the grant writer, was there. Am I missing anybody?
BNSF make it? They were not present.
Roger has had some conversations with BNSF, and he could talk more.
I think we came away thinking we had a pretty good grant request proposal. Some things maybe that we want to beef up a little bit is perhaps the knowledge about our project with FRA, and BNSF has also directly contacted me asking how they could help support the RTSD in getting that grant the next time around, so we are doing that. And I've also got permission to kind of do a briefing for the FRA area representative in this area. He's not part of the selection committee, but just to make sure that FRA is aware of this project. That representative is very supportive. So I was significantly optimistic last year, and I'm still surprised that we didn't get that grant. So I'm going to go into this year even more optimistic, I guess. We'll beef it up. It didn't seem like they had any real concerns with that, and I remain very hopeful that this would be a significant assist for the community and the RTSD to get that done. Well-needed project.
Yeah, well, and just to be clear for everybody involved, this federal grant was in the neighborhood of $55 million to remove at-grade crossings.
Almost 60. We applied for 20%. We already had a $25 million commitment from NDOT for federal funds, so we asked for 80%, and this almost 60 was 80% less than 25.
Right.
And we would continue to ask for that again.
Okay.
So a significant dollar amount.
But yeah, it would change all the conversations we're having.
Certainly would change cash flow to the future, yes.
Does this grant and its application require us to have cash on hand?
Well, it really requires us to be in a position to guarantee when we'll spend the money, and that we do have the financial resources. Actually, Matt, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the deficiencies was the reviewer seemed to not be real confident that we had explained that the financial resources were there to build the project. So we need to beef that up a little bit. I'm very confident the resources are there. It's in the state's TIP. We have the letter and the commitment from the state. It's in the city's long-range plan. It's in the city's TIP, and it's in the RTSD CIP as well. The other thing that we really need to finish up is the environmental document. We need that environmental document there. That's really, once that is signed, that's then the authorization to really start on buying right away and getting into construction. And we're not quite there. The draft is just about to get to federal highway. So, and that's part of why we've been saving the money, and our cash balance is as large as it is that then when the project really gets ready to start, there will be significant expenditures for right-of-way and then starting construction as well. And that's where having the cash in the bank and then running cash flow scenarios based on the project schedule, we show, we're not unduly holding money that we shouldn't be holding. We're going to need that money. Plus, if we get the grant, that will help the cash flow significantly.
Well, to be fair, this federal grant process wasn't available until last year. This wasn't something we were looking at 5 years ago.
No, it's really all part of the federal government's trying to reinvest coming out of COVID. This particular program, and this is just one of several, but this one is the one we believe best fits the mission, the work, and the purpose of our project. This one has $574 million annually available in that program.
Okay.
So, and we still have 4 more years, so we'll keep plugging away at it.
Is it helpful, would it be helpful to have Congressman Flood's involvement? Because there might be someone working in his office who would be familiar.
That is being done.
Okay.
And we had support letters from Senator Fisher's office, Congressman Flood's office, BNSF, NDOT, and we will continue to work on that and beef those up and make sure that our congressional folks are up to speed and up to date on the project as we move ahead as well. And that, yes, that connection in Congressman Flood's office is to be very helpful for the RTSD.
I'm not surprised. And so I'm hearing Chris say that the individual parts have all been approved, and now we're just putting them all together in one big lump. And
They've been reviewed, and we're waiting on one last section to be reviewed enough to assemble the whole document, and then we will submit it. So we're a little bit behind where we wanted to be. Looks like right now, if all the reviews go as scheduled, hopefully we'll be at the point where we can have the public hearing next March, so March of '24.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
All right.
Make sure you write it with a pencil.
Federal government.
Yes.
Right.
So once we do get that submitted, then there'll be a public comment period of time that will respond to public comments, and then it'll be under the last review, and a decision document would probably be issued maybe 6 months after the public hearing, if everything goes as scheduled. So.
Okay. Well, very good. Any other questions on this for Chris? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris?
Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone.
Yes. Mark Meisinger of FHU is here, our consultant that's been doing study work. I apologize for a late transmittal this morning, but I did send a copy of the executive summary of just kind of where that report is, and Mark will kind of go through that, and we'll let him do that, and then have a round-robin discussion probably after. So,
Okay.
Mark?
Thanks, Roger. Again, Mark Meisinger, Felsberg, Holt, and Olevig, to 200 South 21st Street, Lincoln. As Roger mentioned, you've been working on this report for the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone. Submitted that in July to the RTSD, the city, the county, the various railroads, and the state. We have received some response back from the railroad. And I guess maybe just for, I don't know if the new board members are familiar with the project, but it's 14 crossings, Calvert Street on the west or the north, and it goes all the way down into Lancaster County, down to 84th Street, and Yankee Hill Road on the south and east. There's 2 railroads there. There's the BNSF on 8 crossings, well, 9 at Calvert, and 5 with OPPD. They're more, in the county, farther to the south and east. So again, we submitted that. We did get some response back from BNSF that they would like us to go through and do a preemption study. There's 7 crossings on the corridor that are close enough to traffic signals along Nebraska Parkway that there's some potential for preemption. So that's, when the crossing arms come down, the traffic signal would be activated in a certain way. There's existing preemption there, but it's not the most, I guess, advanced is the terminology. Yeah, what's there today is called simultaneous. So when the crossing arms go down, the signal turns on. Advanced preemption would be, depending on the speed of the train, there'd be a certain time before that signal would change. It would be to be able to clear out traffic in those intersections. So anyway, the BNSF has requested that we do this preemption study before they would give us final cost estimates for their equipment. The study that we submitted has some draft cost estimates for equipment based on previous projects. And so Roger and I have been in some correspondence with them and with FRA regarding whether or not they can require the RTSD to have to do this preemption study. It's another, what was it, Roger? Was it $50,000? And I guess our position would be that that's not a cost that we'd be willing to incur on behalf of the RTSD at this stage of the study. We're working on a implementation plan, and we kind of need to wait for those cost estimates from the railroad before we can give you a solid cost number.
These estimates that you've given to us include estimates of that material, or those?
Correct.
It's not excluding that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I guess our plan B might be to give some sort of cost estimate to do this preemption without having to go through the preemption study itself at that $50,000 cost. And so we're waiting for FRA to get back, and we've got a memo drafted up that Roger's going to submit here probably in September. I don't know if you haven't submitted that yet, Roger, have you? And so some of the representatives from FRA, we're asking them to look at that and give us a response as to whether or not BNSF can require the RTSD to go through that process at their cost. Kind of the position again is there's existing equipment out there that's been adequate, and it's not a requirement of a quiet zone to have that type of preemption. So we feel like that's not something they should be able to ask the board and the RTSD to fund. We're also working at the Calvert Street crossing. One of the recommendations was to take Calvert Street out of the quiet zone and to have that be a separate, potentially privatized crossing. Since we did the the study and the project, the elevator there was sold to Farmers Co-op out of Dorchester, Nebraska. And so those new elevator operators, we're trying to get a meeting with them to talk about the project and see if they still want to go forward. The previous company had indicated they would like to install active warning devices and privatize that crossing. But we need to get a meeting with the new operators to make sure that they still want to move forward in that manner. So that's something we're going to be doing here this fall. And as I mentioned, this implementation plan kind of hinges on that and these BNSF cost estimates. So that's kind of the status as it stands today. I can answer questions if you have any.
I was looking just at the cost of these. I noticed that the 70th Street one is significantly more expensive than the others. Can you just help me understand why that one's, $1.25 million, whereas most of them are significantly less?
Sure. At 70th Street, there's an existing crossing that is somewhat, it's, if you look at that compared to the other crossings in the project, it's a rural road that doesn't have an improved roadway. And so most of these others are in some way set up with some sort of existing medians that just need some minor modifications. That one is actually a roadway widening project to accommodate that new median in the middle. And the nature of the roadway with the grades and everything, it's just more expensive to be able to do that on that type of cross section. That crossing is also, it's shared half in the city and half in the county.
The city is now.
Is the city
done
annex that?
an annex,
Okay.
and it's entirely in the city.
Okay.
Which then, in some ways, you've got urban roadway to the south, and urban growth, and urban to the north. I have done some additional conversations with the railroad. Today, it's a 2-lane asphalt street with timber ties, and whatever improvements that would get done, if any get done, need to be consistent with the growing urban environment and not conflict with what the city would want to do. We wouldn't want to spend any money out there now and then turn around and have the city have to revise that. So trying to coordinate that. The city's also working on a trails project that comes down through that area as well. We're not exactly sure where the pedestrian corridors are. So we're trying to coordinate that, but clearly that's an old county road and it needs to be upgraded to more of an urban crossing, which involves quite a bit of new equipment. And
I imagine that whole stretch of 70th is on the radar at the city to potentially expand 4-lane at some point. But
certainly on the radar, but it, like 84th Street sat on east of there, there's a stretch of county road in there. I know the city would love to do those. In the long-range plan, their resources are probably limited as well as the county engineers in some area. It's probably on a list, but I don't believe, Matt, that it's anywhere in the fiscally constrained long-range plan. So it's a day or two down the road. So whatever improvements get done at the crossings, we need to make sure they're viable for a while as well.
A lot of coordination. The short version is we've forwarded the information to the appropriate parties, whether it's BNSF or the FRA.
Right.
Yeah, and waiting for their, we will be waiting for their response. And one of the things we'll be doing is pulling together an implementation plan that, the total of this is about $4 million that we've put together. But in discussions with Roger and others, I think there may be a way to phase that implementation if you don't want to do the whole quiet zone. And so that's part of what we'll be doing once we get some of those cost estimates back.
Well, I would certainly be supportive of moving forward with this project. I know that we were all surprised when that line became active, and South Lincoln, there's a lot of crossings here, right? So
Yeah,
any
14.
improvements to the safety at those crossings and the quiet installation of the quiet zone for quality of life makes a lot of sense to a lot of people in South Lincoln. So I'd be very supportive of moving forward with this as much as we can.
We want to be in a position to give you black and white facts and numbers
Yeah.
so that decisions can be based on that. Another comment about Calvert Street that we might mention too, realizing there's new ownership and we're not exactly sure, but the previous ownership, in addition to wanting all of the safety improvements, gates and lights, they did not want a quiet zone. They wanted the horns from the locomotive to continue to sound for protection of their workers and grain movements back and forth, which I'm tickled to death to entertain the idea of privatizing the crossing and making it private. But should that be the wishes and desire of the owner to continue to have the horn sound, that is close proximity to Pioneers Boulevard, it's close proximity to the neighborhood to the east, it almost defeats the purpose of quiet zone on. But that will be something that we'll have to see. We don't know for sure whether the new management would want to do that, or I'm still supportive of trying to privatize the crossing, and if the RTSD can cost share in putting in some of the safety improvements. That's why we broke it out as a separate project activity.
You're getting into all kinds of issues with that crossing because, you know, this is all governed by federal regulations, and private crossings do not require train horns to be sounded. So the railroads, I mean, now, could there be an agreement between BNSF and this entity, the grain elevator, that they will? Perhaps, I don't know, but it wouldn't be a requirement. So
Yeah.
that one's going to be as complicated as the rest of this project.
And certainly if the RTSD board was going to participate in cost share in some of that, you'd have a role and a right to try to ask perhaps the elevator not to have the locomotive sound the horns. But yeah,
I totally get
more
what
to
they'd want.
more to come in the future on that.
All right. Any other questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Roger, item C.
I would simply say we're continuing to work and I'm trying to help the City of Lincoln and Union Pacific get agreement signed to remove those 3 tracks on Northwest 12th. We'll continue to work on that. I'm not aware of any immediate other activities right now with the railroads going on. Don't think we've got anything out there of undue concern for me on a crossing, but there could be more to come up. So I don't have anything else to relay on railroad work.
All right, thank you. I think things are in pretty good shape. Item number 11, consideration of the Waverly Quiet Zone reaffirmation, which brought 2 of my favorite people here to the RTSD. Mayor Gertis, do you want to come up and, or are you going to let Stephanie do all the heavy lifting today?
Yes. We know how that works.
Yes, Stephanie Fisher from Waverly is here to talk a little bit about that quiet zone, and then I can weigh in a little bit at the end. But Stephanie, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Good morning to RTSD Director Feigard and the board members and staff. I'm Stephanie Fisher, City Administrator for the City of Waverly. I'm here to thank the RTSD for their past cooperation in the creation of the quiet zone in Waverly. Waverly has 2 highway rail grade crossings that are affected in the designation of the quiet zone. One of them is at North 141st Street and the other one's at North 148th. The BNSF rail line that bisects Waverly is a busy section of tracks with approximately 25 trains per day that go through our community, averaging 1 train per hour. Without the quiet zone, the train horns would be sounding 25 times a day. Residents and businesses alike are very grateful for the peace that the quiet zone brings to Waverly. The other tremendous benefit of a quiet zone is safety. The flashing lights, warning devices, and gates that lower to block the crossing provide important notification to drivers and pedestrians of oncoming trains. The raised medians prevent the drivers from driving around the crossing gates and putting them in the path of an oncoming train. Our quiet zone is due for recertification, and I'm requesting that the RTSD again cooperate in the quiet zone designation in Waverly. I have a proposed agreement with Schemmer Associates, the original group that worked on the quiet zone designation back in 2013, did the recertification in 2018, and then I'm asking that they do the recertification again. And that agreement is for $10,710. It will go before our city council for approval at next week's meeting, and I'm asking that the RTSD consider funding the cost of that recertification again this year.
And Roger, this is something that everyone who has a quiet zone is obligated to recertify.
Yeah, federal mandate is every 4.5 to 5 years, you have to go in and recertify that all the safety equipment that was required for the quiet zone is there and operating well. And that's what this effort is, but yes,
And
requirement.
historically, we have cooperated with the entities that are doing this process.
Yes, historically, the RTSD has either directly funded or reimbursed Hickman, Waverly, the city of Lincoln for the recertification work that they've done. And I think that Shimmers did a good job initially in the quiet zone. They did a good job in the first recertification, and I think it makes sense for that consistency to have the same entity do that work. And yes, the RTSD has funded that each year.
Kind of the reason we're here, so. Any questions for Stephanie, or?
I would move that we reaffirm the support.
How about I give you?
Oh,
a-
you're going to give, okay.
Simply, there would be a motion to reimburse Waverly for the quiet zone reaffirmation recertification for the actual cost by their consultant upon billing at the end.
So move.
Yeah. Nice work.
Sarah and I'll clean that up a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
Sarah, it's in your court now.
Alrighty.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Admonson, second by Weber, and please call the roll.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, item number 12, report of other matters.
I'm sorry, I was not paying
It's all right.
attention.
We are up to the report of other matters. Kind of
Nothing to
broad.
report today.
Great. 13, National Rail Safety Week. I know the county boards lived up to their part here, but I guess we have to prove it, right?
Consistent with past practice, the RTSD's mission is a lot like Operation Lifesaver, which works with the railroads and counties and cities and governments all across the United States, and there is a separate group here in Lincoln. I go to their monthly meetings proclaiming the upcoming week of September 18th through 24th as National Rail Safety Week. We've produced a proclamation to that effect, and again, we have done that again this year. And do you want me to read that proclamation, or is it
I
necessary?
don't believe it's necessary.
I don't think so.
Anybody, are we in favor of just
I think
making
we're
a
just in-
motion and adopting?
I would move that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Admonson, second by Bowers, to adopt the National Rail Safety Week proclamation. Please call the roll.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Vest.
Yes. Item 14, and we've signed, by the way. I don't know, have you guys signed, James?
Yep.
Oh,
Yes,
okay, we're
the
good to go.
proclamation is completely executed. I will get it scanned and put on the website, as well as giving copies back to BNSF, back to Operation Lifesaver, and having them on file here at city council offices and out at LTU offices as well.
Very good. We'll move on then to item 14, communications correspondence.
Don't have anything.
Item 15 is non-agenda items, public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment about RTSD issues not on the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Edmondson, second by Schulte to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Schulte?
Yep.
Best?
Yes.
Edmondson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.